Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. More importantly, happy Memorial Day on this day that we remember and honor those that fought and died so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we do. It's always a very humbling day. Something happened today on this Memorial Day that I had to share. I have a lot of family members that served, my dad, my grandpa, but I don't have any family members or close friends of family that were killed in action, thankfully. And the gravity of that and the thought of not only those that died, but also their loved ones who go on without them is overwhelming, especially on a day like this. And for some reason today, I was thinking about this podcast and something I wanted to do for Memorial Day, and the name Roosevelt Hestle came into my mind. And there's like a little backstory. Like, there's no reason at all why I should remember that name. But this happened earlier today, and it gave me goosebumps. And I shared this story on my radio show today, and I wanted to share it here as well. When I was about 10 years old, my family went to D.C. We did the whole D.C. trip, right? We did White House and the Capitol and the Smithsonian, and we did all of the memorials. And in part of that was going to the Vietnam War Memorial. And if you've never been, it is overwhelming, the gravity of that memorial, the size of the wall that extends seemingly forever with tens of thousands of names on it of soldiers and men and women that died in Vietnam. And the story goes that when my mom was a kid and she was in school, there was some program set up. I don't know if it was through her school or if it was a government program, but they were assigned a soldier, and they prayed for that soldier and could write him a letter. And my mom was assigned Roosevelt Hestle. And again, I was 10 years old. Like, I have classmates and teachers that I don't even remember from when I was 10 years old. But maybe it was just, being in Washington, D.C., and at the Vietnam Memorial with my parents and my siblings. And when as Vietnam was unfolding and she was praying for this person, she got a bracelet because Roosevelt Hestle was missing in action, and so she was praying for him. And to this day, she still has this bracelet. 50 years later, almost 52 years later, she still has this bracelet with this man's name on it, who she never met and just prayed for during that war. Who's a soldier, or an airman who fought during Vietnam. And so if you've ever been to the Vietnam Memorial, there are people who work at the monument that because it's so vast, that if you're looking for a name, they can help you find it. So my mom wanted to find the name of Roosevelt Hestle. She never ever found out what happened. And lo and behold, that we were able to find Roosevelt Hestle's name on the wall. And she took a picture next to it. And I mean, again, 10 years old. And there's no reason at all why I should remember this as vividly as I do, or remember that name. Again, at my 10-year reunion for high school, I got out the yearbook, and I was in a relatively small class, only 175 people. I covered all the names and tried to go and name every classmate. I couldn't do it. There were people not only that I didn't know their name, I didn't recognize their face at all. Wait, that person was in my class. Is this the right year, sort of thing? So for me, it's kind of remarkable that at 10 years old, to hear this name of someone that I never met before, but still to remember it, 25, 30 years later, to me was remarkable, or really just inexplicable. But today I woke up and for some reason that entered my mind. The name Roosevelt Hestle entered my mind, and maybe wanted to talk about him on the podcast today. And again, it's not like every year on Memorial Day I think about this. I'm not sure that I've thought about it since I was 10 years old, but for some reason the name entered my head today. And so I was like, I'm going to talk about Roosevelt Hestle on this Memorial Day on this podcast. So I was like, let me make sure. I'm going to Google, because obviously there's a record of the Vietnam Memorial. Let me Google just to make sure I have the name right and all of this right. So I type in the name Roosevelt Hestle Vietnam Memorial. And An article comes up from April the 6th of 2018, a month ago, a little more than a month ago. Now understand, like, this is someone who died in Vietnam or went missing in Vietnam in 1966. So went missing 50 years ago. I haven't thought of this name in almost 30 years. And today, I type in his name, and there's a relevant article from the Department of Defense from a month ago. And it reads like this. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency announced today that the remains of a U.S. serviceman missing from the Vietnam War have been identified and will be returned to his family for burial with full military honors. Air Force Colonel Roosevelt Hestle Jr., 38, of Orlando, accounted for on June 6, 2017, will be buried April 13, 2018, in Arlington National Cemetery near Washington, D.C. On July 6, 1966, Hestle was a pilot assigned to the 388th Tactical Fighter Squadron, aboard the lead aircraft in a flight of 4 F-105s on a strike mission against surface-to-air missile sites in northern Vietnam. As they approached the target, Hestle issued a missile launch warning, and all aircraft began evasive action by diving toward the ground. As the aircraft approached the town of Tai Nguyen, anti-aircraft began firing at them. Due to the evasive action, the other aircraft lost sight of Hestle. Crews aboard one aircraft observed a large ball rising from the ground, though no crash was observed. Contact attempts were unsuccessful and no parachutes or distress signals were seen or heard. Due to hostile conditions in the area, search and rescue attempts could not be initiated, and an aerial search of the area produced no results. Based on this information, Hestle was declared missing in action. That was 1966. In January of 1995, during the 33rd Joint Field Activity, a joint U.S. Socialist Republic of Vietnam team excavated an F-105 crash site near Bin Son village. Several pieces of life support equipment were recovered, but no remains were recovered. On April 15th of 2015, a joint forensic review team received possible human remains recovered by a Vietnamese national who was farming the area in 1996. The remains were sent to the DPA laboratory for analysis. They were able to identify Hestle's remains. For me, this was just a goosebump moment this morning where a serviceman who went missing in July of 1966, on June 6th of July 6th of 1966. July of 1966. 52 years later, his remains were identified. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. And 1 month after that, his name entered my brain for the first time in a quarter century. I Googled it and found the story, sent it to my mom. She was shocked this morning. She's like, Matt, how did you remember that name? I said, I don't know. I just always did. And searched it, lo and behold, this came up. So on this day, there are as of this publishing, 1,598 American servicemen and civilians unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. Let's remember all those who bravely fought and died in defense of our country, but in a particular way today, the 1,598 American servicemen and civilians that are unaccounted for from the Vietnam War, and a special prayer for Colonel Roosevelt Hestle, who died in 1966 and was unaccounted for 52 years, who just a month ago took his rightful resting place at Arlington National Cemetery. So a special prayer of thanksgiving for his service and for his family to have closure and the opportunity to provide him his final resting place in Arlington National Cemetery. To Colonel Roosevelt Hestle and all those who have fought and died in defense of our country so we can enjoy the freedoms that we do, a very sincere thank you on this Memorial Day.